for our New to Coaching Better Conversations Facebook group chat. Excited that you're here. So we'll just get started. We saw some introductions already on the chat. That's awesome. And it's really great to have you all here. And I'd love to hear if you had a chance to watch the partnership principles videos. Maybe give me a thumbs up because I can see you if you have. And we can talk through some of your thoughts on those. So since there aren't too many of us in here, I would love for you to be able to unmute and chat. So we'll get to that in just a second. For our discussion, we'll talk a little bit about, have some questions for us. Let me pin the discussion. So I wanted to mention to you too that everything in terms of the schedule for our live discussions is in the in the Better Conversations book study course that you all joined. So just in case you wanted to look at that again, they're here for you. So this week we're going to start with the partnership principles videos, and that is going to just get us started with our discussion, really think about the foundations for those better conversations. And that gave everybody a little bit of time to think about it before they could get into the book and get started reading with the book. So next week we'll actually start by reading chapters 1 and 2 of the book. Chapter 1 is very introductory, and chapter 2 is Jim Knight's Better Conversation Beliefs, and that's where we'll really start our conversation, is identifying those beliefs that he gives out, but then also we'll do some thinking about our own better conversation beliefs, and that might help you think about, as you're coaching, what are some ways that you can really establish your foundational beliefs for coaching. So the next week we'll go into chapter 3, which is Listen with Empathy, and that one is probably one of the best foundational pieces that we can use when we're thinking about better conversations, is just how to listen better, and we can definitely think about that when we have escalated emotions and stress in this crisis that we have going on. For week 4, we'll actually jump ahead in the book to chapter 8. And the reason I did this is because with a lot of people that I've read this book with have always said I jumped straight to that chapter because it's a very hot topic. How do you redirect toxic words and emotions is the name of that chapter. And it feels really relevant here in this time of crisis. So we'll talk about that chapter. And of course you can read in order if you want, but once you've read chapters 1 and 2, you can jump from chapter to chapter, because each of the other chapters are basically the habits that go with the beliefs that Jim puts forth. So it's fine if you just jump over to chapter 8 and then jump back. And then for our final meeting, we'll kind of go backwards a little. We'll go back to chapters 4 and 5 and talk about asking better questions and fostering dialogue, just so that we can really think about how do we get into those conversations and use the questioning techniques and meaningfully create dialogue. And I think it's helpful to talk about the toxic words and emotions first, because you can figure out how you're going to handle that, and then thinking about better conversation, asking better questions and fostering dialogue can help you think about, okay, now I'm going to go back into that conversation. How am I going to do it? So that's the order of the topics that we're going to be talking about in the next few weeks. And then just in case you haven't yet, I've had a lot of people jump on the Voxer, but if you haven't yet, Voxer is this great professional learning community tool that you can hop onto, and you can join us for kind of what we call an asynchronous chat, where you can just send us a voice message anytime you have a thought, and people can reply on their own time. So it doesn't have to be a live meeting, but you can also you can talk back and forth. It's kind of a walkie-talkie app. So it's great, and a lot of people use it for professional learning communities, and I think this would be a great time. So if you want to, you can hop onto the Voxer app, create an account, and then use this link, and it'll automatically add you into the group that we have going on. So that's here. And then for each week, each of these modules will have discussion questions posted, and I've been sending an email to you if you join the group, so that you can just get those discussion questions in your email too and have them. So that's kind of what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks. I was excited that so many people wanted to join us for this. I think we had about 50 people join the course, and we've got 17 or 20 people in here now. So that's awesome. All right. So I just thought we'd just dive right in and get going with a chat, because it's supposed to be a discussion, not me talking. So I would love to know which of the partnership principles resonated with the teacher in you. I think this is a pretty relevant question, because a lot of us have a lot of good teacher experience. We were teaching in the classroom, so what were we doing? And then as you were listening to these, what kind of hit your teacher heart and made you feel like it was something that would resonate with you as a teacher? So anybody want to unmute, just go ahead and share your thoughts. Give you a minute. Well, one of the things that resonated with me as a teacher was really the idea of voice, I think, because voice to me is something that when I was a teacher, I was thinking a lot about how to create voice for my students in my classroom. And I was really experimenting with like asking them for surveys, giving them a lot more choice. And then choice was one of the ones too. So choice and voice, because I think that that's something that you think about a lot as a teacher, how you want to create that environment for students. And so when you go to turn it around and you think about coaching, I think that that resonates a lot with me as the teacher in me, because I would love for someone to coach me and really be able to help me have a voice in the coaching process, and allow me to feel like I'm being heard, and that what some of the things that I want to try or want to do, that they're willing to kind of come alongside of me and like try those things out with me as a teacher. So that's definitely one of the ones that was meaningful to me as when I was looking at it. Another one was praxis. I had to kind of remember what Jim Knight's definition of praxis was. But with praxis, I really liked the idea of practical application inside of coaching. And so as a teacher, I wanted to use the things that were feeling relevant to me. I wanted to do those things. I wanted to try something new in my classroom, and I want somebody to help me with something I actually wanted to try. And so I think that that helps resonate a lot with me as a teacher, to think about as I'm coaching teachers, what might resonate with them the most.
I said voice and choice were what resonated with me. I think when people have the choice, if they want to commit, they're going to be more likely to be all in if they can choose that. And one of the things he said in the video, without choice, it's hard to get commitment. And then I like the quote he used. He said, if you persist, they will resist. And I was thinking, a lot of times, like when we're putting pressure on people to say yes, they're like getting backed into a corner, and they're going to be more resistant. So I think being able to put choice out there is huge. I thought praxis was the hardest one to implement, because of the idea of being authentically reflecting together. I think it's hard to find time to do that. And you have to be intentional about making sure that you put that time in your schedule when you're coaching. Because like if you're in the classroom and you're coaching a lesson and it's happening, you still need to put time aside after it happens to make sure that you reflect and grow from what you're talking about in the reflection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Allison, I actually really think that equality was the one that hit the nail on the head for me. I've been in a variety of different seats across tables, and I feel like the minute that someone's sitting across the table from me is treating me in a way in which they believe they have got to help me or discipline me or get me into a place where I need to be doing a certain method of instruction or delivering a certain means to my students, The minute I pick up on that is the minute that I back off. And professional learning, for me, I will say often leads that way, just because when coaches, professional content specialists are sent to us, they're sent by leaders who direct them to say, I need my teachers doing XYZ, I need you to present on this. And often that pressure on them then leads to a need to almost be the person delivering what needs to be done. And it comes across much different than peers. And when you don't have that equality, you don't look across the table and see someone as a peer. Rather, you see that person as the person that's delivering that top-down instruction to you of what you need to do, leave, go, do. It crushes, exactly what I said, it crushes your intent. You leave and you don't do. So in order to make sure that you are facilitating something with teachers that is going to be carried out in their instruction, in their activity, I believe that, that equality is important, but the relationship aspect of that takes time. And that's the important key. If you're new to coaching and you're getting into a new role or a new school or a new experience, you have to build the relationships, because people won't necessarily know how to take you until they truly have those interactions with you and know really who you are.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Equality is a big one. Which other ones resonated with you as a kind of the teacher in you? Anybody else?
I said choice, because first of all, I'm a kindergarten teacher and I'll be an instructional coach next year. I was hired at just within the last month to be an instructional coach for next year at a different school than I'm currently at. So I said choice. I just wrote down a couple of things that he said. One of the three things that motivates our life is autonomy over what we do. And without the choice, which I know somebody already said this, it's very hard to get that commitment. And I like the part where it talked about change leaders curate choices, because we do, I think, live in a world now where we can have so many choices, and we want to do something and we know, okay, I really want to do this, and we start to research and look for things, and there's so much out there and it can be overwhelming. So I like that part about change leaders help curate those choices. And then something that in the webinar that you shared that I watched, I liked how it said firm on standards, flexible on how you get there as part of that autonomy.
Yeah, no, I liked that too in the webinar.
Yeah.
Because it helps understand, like, with autonomy and with choice and with voice, all of those things like have to still exist within the boundaries of, of the guidelines of they were saying like responsible autonomy, where you have to be still responsible even though you have the ability to make some choices within your classroom, that you're not going outside of the accountability.
I was thinking about the DeFores and PLCs and the idea of tight and loose cultures within a school, and how within a school there are some things that can be loose, which opens up to that choice. And I think that this feeds into the role coaches play with having those conversations with teachers around their growth, but giving the choice to how to get there. But then the tight piece is and Jim Knight even said it in, I think, the video on choice, was that there are going to be some things that are non-negotiables, that just within our building, this is what we do. And so there are expectations, but the choice is you get to decide how you get there and how you collaborate with others, or how you grow yourself as a professional. So that idea of choice really stuck out to me in terms of just the DeFores model, PLCs, and tight and loose cultures.
Yeah, no, I like that.
I think for me it was voice, because I'm in a district where we're a redesign school in our state, and so they basically threw everything out and started with everything new, and the teachers didn't have a lot of voice or choice on what was chosen. So we're learning a lot of things that maybe weren't their choice. And now so it really is a difficult hump to get over because they're mad and they're upset. And so we're in a kind of a stalemate of this isn't what I wanted. And so it's really hard to kind of overcome that if they don't feel like there's voice or choice and their thoughts don't matter.
Yeah, no, I think that that's one of the biggest things that we have to try and do as coaches is figure out how we can help create choice and voice in there with our conversations. And one of the things that brought to mind for me too is that if you can be a voice for the teachers with the administration, like if you can be a liaison and a go-between, then you can help teachers feel like they have a voice because they know that they talk to you, and then they know that you were able to go and sit in a meeting with administration and speak for them about something. And then that helps them see that they do have a voice and something maybe did change because they were able to work with you on helping it happen. And so you play a unique role as a coach between, teachers and admin, just as this kind of liaison. And that can help the teachers really feel like they have more of a voice if you're speaking for them, and they know that you're speaking for them, and they believe in that. So, good. So, was there another thought on it?
I was just gonna add, sorry guys, a little bit more about voice. Something I wrote down about what he said about voice is that teachers don't have a voice, students feel that they don't have a voice, but the research shows that students are 7 times more likely to achieve when they have that voice. And if teachers have a voice, then they can give that voice to students. So it's all going to kind of connect together, and that's why it's really important to make sure they have that. And again, the two are very close. Those are the two, choice and voice, that spoke to me. But the fact is, it's also going to trickle down to the students and what they're able to do when teachers feel that way, that they have that as well. So that just really stood out to me with all this talk about achievement, that some of the things they're doing actually goes against what the research says when you start taking away that choice and voice from teachers.
Yeah, I liked what Jim said about that it's gonna cascade down, and that the students will have choice and voice if the teachers do, and that there's a correlation between the two. So if we want teachers to create that environment in their classrooms and we want to help them with that, then we have to help them feel like they have that in their space. So love that. Okay, so let's talk about one of the next ideas here, which one seems like the easiest one to implement or help teachers with versus the hardest. Which one is kind of low-hanging fruit? Which one do you think you could tackle well and easily?
I think choice is the easiest one because it's either yes or no.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that might be a controversy to that is when you have an administrator who assigns you as a coach to work with a teacher who doesn't want your help. Right. That is a problem. And you have to do it because your administrator tells you, I want you working with this teacher.
Right. So even though that teacher doesn't feel like they have choice in maybe meeting with you, maybe they could have some choice in what they want to work on when they're with you.
Yeah.
Potentially.
So then choice is hard because you have to finesse it and find a way to make it work. So, but I think it could be the easiest, but it depends on the situation.
Yeah. Any others that seemed easy to you?
I said, since I don't have any experience, I felt like the equality piece was going to be easier for me because I actually feel like I'm going to be coming in not knowing as much as they do. I have been at the same school for 12 years and I'm going to a new school. I don't know people there. I'm not familiar with really anything. So I feel like in my mind, there's no way I would ever feel like I know more than these people who have all been there together and know the students and know the things that they're doing. So I felt like for myself, I'm going to be coming in with no judgment because I'm going to really have to work on this, building the relationships with people and getting to know people. And So
Yeah.
that's why I said like that. But yeah, that's why I said I felt like that one was going to be the easiest.
Well, that's great. That's a hard one sometimes to come at with the stance of equality, because even though you don't intend to, you sometimes the coach gets set up as an administrator or somebody who feels like they're above the teachers in some way. And so you have to build that relationship, like Jamie was saying, and make sure that you really have created a true equality relationship, not one that feels like it's forced, but that, so it's good that you feel like you can come in and take that stance pretty quickly.
I think equality too, because I think that if you have that, it kind of builds and it moves down. If they feel equality, then it's easier to do choice, it's easier to voice, it's easier to do dialogue. It all kind of flows down from there. But on the other hand, what you said is so true, because teachers do look at you, whether administration puts it on you as maybe a step above, and they look for your approval, and you can be friends and have a relationship, but you can't have friends because it's really hard if you pick favorites, or there's a fine line that's different than being a teacher, which is hard to get used to.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that's hard, coming from the teacher role, is just understanding that shift is that you're not the teacher anymore. So all these things that you used to anchor to aren't really there anymore. You don't have your group of students. Now you have teachers. But it's not the same. It doesn't feel the same. And so you really have to kind of manage your own emotions around it, because that buddiness that you're talking about, Mary Jane, like that you used to be able to have with teachers, that it kind of shifts in the coaching role. And it doesn't mean that you can't have meaningful relationships with them, but the same kind of casual friendship is harder to achieve when you're trying to also coach. So and I'm sure you've experienced some of that. Here, I see some heads nodding.
I thought maybe dialogue was one of the easiest to implement, because to me, and it goes with equity, but that's the one I feel like we have the personal most control over, is how we approach the dialogue that we're having with teachers. Are we making sure it's a back and forth conversation? Are we going in with the idea that we can learn from this person as well? And again, they're also intertwined, so it's hitting on those equity ideas. But dialogue, I think, is where I started to think like this is really where we have the most control of what we do and how we approach something. And I had a new teacher I was working with kind of call me out on it. We were going over a lesson and she's like, well, can you tell me anything positive? And I realized I didn't center myself before, like, what can I learn from her? Where are these? And it's definitely a learning bump, but I'm still working with her and we got a good relationship. But I just saw that as you have the most personal control over is in the dialogue.
Yeah. I think, though, dialogue can also be tricky, because if you haven't, built that relationship, sometimes they're not as willing to kind of come into that dialogue with you. So it takes some finesse and relationship building, really, to feel like they will engage in the dialogue. Sometimes they're either going to wait for you to bring it to them. But I love that. That's a good one. Others that we thought maybe were easy. I don't know if praxis is truly easy, but I do think that I like praxis a lot as one that I feel like is something you could try to work on with teachers and feel like you could make some manageable hurdles with, because you want to try something that they are currently doing or want to do immediately. Something that feels really practical and feels really urgent to them. I think that's when you can actually really kind of capitalize on their energy. I've had teachers come in and they just sit in my chair at the desk table in my office, and they will just start talking about something. And like, I could talk to them about something else that's on my mind, but if I will capitalize on what they are interested in working on, and it feels very relevant to them and very practical, that's when I feel like I can really get them to invite me into the conversation. They brought up the topic. They want to talk about it. Okay, I can talk with you about that. Even if sometimes they come in complaining, perhaps like about a student issue or classroom management issue, like I can kind of latch on to whatever it is that they've just brought to me and kind of dive into the practical of, well, let me help you with that. Do you want me to come to your class tomorrow and we can look at it? And, I just try not to let that urgent thing that's on their mind go, and use it as a door to get in and do more. So I like praxis a lot.
I agree.
Go ahead.
And I agree. And I was just going to say, I kind of feel like there isn't really a way to tease one of these out without the other. And especially how you were just kind of explaining that, when you're having that conversation, they pop up, they show in your office, and now it's like you have this dialogue that's happening, and you want to meet them where they are, and you want to give them choices to help them solve the problem, and you're treating them as an equal. You're not the expert. Like, I think that all of this is hard work, and at times it's lends itself to days where it seems a little more natural, a little bit easier. And I think part of that is our own internal way of trying to separate from an expectation of what this job needs to look like and start to just meet people where they are and help them with what their next natural step is to support their instruction and the learning of students.
Yeah, I felt that a lot during the crisis too. Like I cannot work with them on anything really that they're not going to bring to me. It won't feel relevant. It won't feel like it's something that they actually need. I thought about, like presenting a couple of different sessions, like come to my online session. I'll tell you about different forms of assessment. But when I started to throw that out there, it was just not something that they felt like they needed help with. Now, we'll see if they really need help with it, but that's okay. Like, it's not what they wanted to work on just then. So you really going with the relevant thing. I like what you were saying there, Nicole. Just kind of going with what they're bringing you is really how you can help. How can you support them? The best is help them with what they've brought you. And often too, what they bring you initially is not always what they actually want to work on, but it's like the thing that's the most urgent. And if you can get in the door with the urgent thing, then you'll find yourself getting more opportunities to touch base with that teacher again, and you'll eventually get to the deeper thing, either something that she wants to work on that's a deeper issue, or you'll finally be able to kind of get her to a place where she's comfortable enough with you to go deeper with you on something. So I like that.
I totally agree. And I just think like those little moments are those relationship builders and trust builders, and you've got to really take care of those moments, especially in the very, very beginning, because they will lead to bigger and better places, whether it's a place you're trying to push and support or a place that they're bringing in. But just that is so, so important in the very beginning.
Yeah, no, I love that. Do we want to talk about the ones that are hard? I see smiles. Okay, so which ones do you think seem like they would be the most difficult to do with teachers? Even they can be overlapping. They might have been, somebody else might have thought it was easy, but you think it's difficult. That's fine too.
Reflection.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, expand on that a little more. What else? What about reflection seemed hard?
I think it was finding time, like going back and finding time for it. And you can't, it's really hard. For different people, some people naturally reflect, but some people, reflection is not something they actively pursue or do. And so it's difficult to pull that and to be looking at that.
Yeah, and I think because like the whole point of reflection is to reflect and then move forward, like learn what you've done in order to then, move yourself forward. And I think that's hard. It's hard as people have a hard time doing it to build and become better. I'll be the first one to say, like, I'm not always great at this. So, but I feel like you're sometimes naturally good at it and sometimes you're just naturally not, and you have to really work on it.
Yeah, and I don't think people always want to stay in that place where it's hard to think and reflect, and they're quick to want to just move on to something else. So you kind of forcing them to do that thinking, they'll sometimes, some of them, some personalities, like you said, will balk at that.
I think what else is interesting about how Jim described reflection, it wasn't just looking back at what we already did, but reflecting in the moment, looking at where we currently are and also looking ahead. And I think that's kind of a change in the idea of reflection. When you hear it, I think most people go back to that looking back. But if you're in the middle of a cycle, or you're in the middle of working something with a teacher, you both have to be reflecting in that moment so that we can still be able to think about what we're going to do and how we can address anything that might come up, like within the middle of it, not just at the end. So kind of shifting that view of what reflection is.
Yeah, I really liked what he said about that. The past reflection, present reflection, and future reflection was really kind of like a little light bulb in my mind too, about, well, we have to reflect for the future. What are we going to do next? And I think it just is about intentional thinking. Like if we're trying to teach our students metacognition, right, and how they think about their thinking, I think we have to create a culture with our teachers around that too. So I know that it's a hard one to do, but maybe it's a place where whenever we can, like whenever we are invited into a faculty meeting or can speak into a faculty meeting, that we offer an opportunity for reflection there. For this crisis, I actually did that. I kind of did it as like it was a reflection activity, but it was also like a here's how you use Google Classroom activity. So I showed them how to push out a document through Google Classroom, and then they each got a copy of just a quadrant reflection that was just like, what have you learned in the past, like, because this is right after we had launched our digital learning, what have you learned, and then it was, what else do you want to learn next? So it was a couple different questions, but it was intentionally like a reflection activity. But what was great was that it gave me that data point as a coach to be able to turn around and say, oh, they said that they still want to work on this, or they are mentioning they're still having trouble with this. And so it was kind of like a little survey opportunity for me to follow up with them. So then I could say, hey, I saw on your reflection, do you want to work on that? And so it gave me an in. So trying to find ways to force reflection by maybe doing it in a group setting or something that might not feel as threatening, but then will give you that ticket out the door type of data, that you used to have as a teacher. And now you have your coaching data to know how to help your teachers.
Allison, for me, I'm thinking praxis. And the reason I'm thinking praxis is because the words meaningful work was used. And I think often that as teachers, we have so much on our plate and we're told all of it is meaningful. And if everything is meaningful, then nothing is meaningful. And so I think you've got to get to a place with teachers where you can have conversations about something very specific. And make that very relevant to what's going on with them, rather than it being all of the initiatives that are happening, or the new textbook adoption, or I heard someone say, it was everything had changed in their district and it was everything brand new. So I think drawing away from the idea of maybe the initiatives or the new programs or a tool, and making meaningful work about the very specific instructional practices or the very specific standards-based practices, that's going to be far easier to hone in on when it comes to meaningful work.
Absolutely. Which other ones, if any others, seem hard?
I said dialogue because I feel like since I am going into a new situation, I feel like I don't have established relationships with people. I don't know a lot about them. I don't will they trust me to have that dialogue? Because they don't. So I put for myself, that I thought dialogue was going to be a hard one.
Yeah, I think dialogue does require some relationship existing, but also questioning. I think dialogue is a lot connected to equity, because the idea of that is that you are going to go in and you want to learn from them too. And I mean, that's kind of reciprocity too. That word always gets me. But just this idea of like being curious, going in with curiosity is something that he talks about in the book. So we'll talk a little bit about that too, but just coming with that curious mindset. And then when you're going into dialogue, always being ready with questions so that you create a space for the other person to talk. Because we come into this role with instructional expertise, we have a lot to share about this topic that we're supposed to be working on. So it's easy for us to kind of go on a rant and start talking about the instruction, and here's the idea, and here's what we could do here, you know, and I get excited, and I know we're all very passionate, and so like, ooh, look at all the things we can do. But I think it's about being able to say, I want to know what you think, and then prompting them with a question to create the dialogue, to have that happen. So when we read that dialogue chapter too, it'll give us some other good ways to foster and intentionally create dialogue. That's why I think asking better questions and fostering dialogue go together, because you have to be ready with questions and be open to creating the space for both of you to have a spot to talk. Okay, so let's just go to the reason why we picked this book. The reason why this was on our minds is because of everything we have going on with the crisis. Let's see, did I get down to this one? So, what has been most useful for you when considering these during times of this time of crisis? Is anything, as you're thinking about working with your teachers now, or kind of anything that feels really relevant, what has felt kind of most useful when Jim was talking that you might be able to take now and use in this environment and in this situation? I'm sure we'll have more things will be good takeaways, but just based on the videos.
I think you have to start with dialogue. I think you have to check in with people. And I think you have to say, how are things going? What's on your mind? Because there's a lot on people's minds that we don't see because of everyone being at home right now.
Yep.
And so just checking in with them and just really going after the social emotional piece is really important, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the choice piece, remembering to be careful of innovation overload, because I think that's how all of this started when the school started closing. There's just so much being thrown at teachers, at coaches, at administrators. You got to do this, you got to try that. So being able to help teachers make what's going to be the best choice for their students as they're thinking about digital learning and what they want to provide and how to, still keep them engaged with it. So kind of keeping it in check with there, and that whole idea that change leaders curate choice as opposed to just throwing everything at them, helping them figure out what's going to be best for them and their students in this time. And the fact that it might look different from teacher to teacher. I work in multiple buildings, so that can be a little overwhelming for kids, but we got to make sure teachers are comfortable in what they're having the kids do.
Yeah, I think too, there's been an element of choice with this situation where it was a choice. They have to do what we've asked them to do in terms of like, you have to teach online, you have to do these things. But there are some things that like would be kind of an above and beyond that we said you don't have to do. But some of them want to. Like, for example, our teachers have wanted to do guided reading online. And so that's something we're still kind of learning how to do as a school. And so one or two teachers wants to like really go all out and like go ahead and do different meets and plan everything. But the other teachers just really in this environment were already overwhelmed, and they weren't really ready to go that far. They didn't feel as comfortable. And so the choice there was that you don't have to do that extra thing, that idea of the innovation overload. I've been saying that from the beginning, like these are the basic things you have to do. And then if you want to go and do these other things, we can help you with them, but they're optional. And I think just allowing for that opportunity for them to say, okay, I don't have to do this, and you've told me I don't have to do this, so I'm allowed to, not do everything in this environment. So I feel like that has that's been the way we've done choice, is almost saying like, here's the things you have to do, and here are some things you can do too, but you don't have to. So freeing them up.
I feel like we're coming back on a cycle around because now we're hearing rumors and talk about not starting in the fall. And we've kind of made do with the last 8 weeks. But the teachers know that you can't sustain child's education on the minimum that and the amount that we've been doing. And so now it's coming, and they're starting to ramp up the pressure of learning even more technology, or many didn't even do technology. It's a packet form of a system. So I think it's building more and more anxiety as we're looking into the fall because of the talk of what if this continues and what if it recurs again. So the social emotional with that, trying to figure out how can you streamline this to make as easy as possible but not overload.
Right. Well, and then if we have to go to that extreme, if this continues, how do we help them more fully embrace this environment? That's so true. There's a lot going on there.
I really agree with that, because I think there's so many unknowns that I feel like in all the groups that I've had discussions in, grade levels, school buildings, there's so many more questions than there are answers. So people are feeling like an uncertainty. So I think we've talked a lot about grace and giving ourselves grace and trying to meet those basic needs. And then if you can, or, doing those other things.
Absolutely. Everyone is still at kind of a high stress level. I think because we kind of just, like you're talking about with this cycle, it was super high stress at first, and now we've kind of leveled off, and now we kind of know what we're doing. But then we heard, we're going to be out until the end of the school year, and so it goes back up. Oh, now I have to actually finish. How am I going to do final exams? How am I, I work at a K-12, so I have all grade levels. So, how am I going to do this thing and this thing? And so the stress kind of keeps amping up with each new uncertainty. And so that's kind of where we can support as coaches, again, kind of like you were saying, just what's on your mind? What can I help you with? Help them think through it so that they can land at a place where they get to a solution. I feel like sometimes they're so wrapped up in their anxiety and worry that they can't make a decision. And often sitting across from you, not because you're going to tell them what to do, but because they're sitting across from you and they have to talk out loud, they land finally at a place where they're going to be able to make a decision and move forward. And if you can support them in just that way, just being there as a, partner to think out loud so that they can make a decision and move forward in this stress, I think that really helps them. All right. Well, sorry, I'm on the call. Say hi. Say hi. Got a visitor. Oh, he's not on the call. It's doing too slow. Okay. Well, I think, I'd love if anybody else has any other thoughts or would like to share anything, or questions that they want to throw out to the group. So much for taking time out of your afternoon. Anything else on your mind? Okay, awesome. So we will we'll get started reading. Next week we will jump in again and just talk through what you read, how you felt about it, and I'll post some discussion questions that will be helpful for us. I also have, I don't know if any of you happen to have this one, but this is like the Better Conversations workbook. I don't think you obviously don't have to have it, but I'll use that for our guided discussions and some of the things that might be helpful for you. There's a few other free downloadable things that are on Jim's site that we can also look at. You can kind of rate yourself on the different conversation beliefs and how you feel about them. So anyway, I'll kind of get some of those resources together for us for next week, and I'll post them into the course and post some questions. So while you're reading, and we'll get together again. And again, in the meantime, we'll be on Voxer. So if you want to keep chatting, you want to keep talking, just feel free to hop on that Voxer anytime. even if you're like, I don't want to bother people or whatever, that's how Voxer works, is you can just reply when you have time. So just jump in there if you're out on a walk or, doing something. Just share your thoughts. We'd love to hear them.
Speaking of Voxer, I could use some help. I'm new to it, so I can't figure out where to put the link in. So anybody who's willing to stay a few minutes and help me figure it out, I would appreciate it.
Well, what you can try to do, did you look me up?
No, I didn't.
Okay, if you try and look me up, I'm at ALCP. It's the same as my, so it's just at ALCP. And if you look me up as a friend and then like send me a message maybe, then I can add you. So if that's easier, feel free to do that.
So it's under your name?
Yes, ALCP should be all you have to search, or search Allison Peterson. And just make sure you spell my last name with an E in.
Okay, I'll look for you.
Yeah, and then I can add you in. And then the other thing you can do is if you just click on that link, I think, from your phone, like if you try and go into no, that didn't work. I just thought maybe if you clicked on the link from your phone, it would go to Voxer. Christy,
I have it brought up. I can get some help from it, I think.
Yeah, but if you send me a message individually, then I'll have you on my list and I can add you to the group. So that's the easiest
sounds
way.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. All right, well, we'll see you guys on Voxer. Have an awesome afternoon. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Hey, Allison.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you've ever tried Zoom breakout rooms.
I haven't, because what we've used Google Meets for our school. So I haven't really explored Zoom breakout rooms as much. Now, Jamie, though. Jamie, have you done the breakout rooms?
I have not chosen to do the breakout rooms because I'm working with 8 and 9-year-olds.
Okay.
I was on a super large group yesterday. It was like over 200 people, and they did the breakout room thing, and it was really cool. It was just nice because then there were 4 people in the conversation, and we could talk more and get more dialogue going versus like one way. I don't know. So I was just wondering if you'd want to try it.
Absolutely. I can look into it, and maybe we can switch to Zoom for next time around. The other thing I was concerned about with Zoom is I don't have a paid account, so we could only do 40 minutes, I think.
So, Allison, you can get the
free right now for everybody.
Okay.
It's open.
Okay.
The difference, Allison, is going to be bandwidth. I have been doing Zoom for a while, and I quit Zoom because depending on bandwidth will determine the quality of what you're working with. And going back to Meet this week has been 110%. So you could try Zoom, but it does take up tons more bandwidth and can cause a lot